Welcome to Coach Stories. This is episode 2, brought to you by DiBernardo Online Soccer Coaching School at DiBernardoSoccerSchool.com. I feature the Youth Diploma, Senior Diploma, Cognitive Diploma courses all online. Also, check out my Author Central page on Amazon.com featuring 60 plus of my books. So let's jump right into this. Last show, I discussed the importance of understanding your environment, really making the effort to figure out where you're working. You have to understand how it works. So for you to make an impactful, meaningful change in the environment or contribute as a coach, as a teacher, you have to first figure out where you are, what type of environment, what type of culture you're in. So in today's podcast, what I'm going to go over is I'm going to take it one step further. And another piece of it that's critical to the environment is the building of trust. And trust can be defined in many different ways for me. And probably the best way for me to explain what trust is by sharing with you a couple short stories, which is what this podcast is all about my own personal teaching experiences and coaching experiences. So for most of my career, I actually moved around quite a lot. I went from one place to the other, never really staying and working and coaching in just the community that I grew up in. I went absolutely everywhere. I was always up for a new adventure. But with these new adventures, it meant working in new environments. And one of the toughest environments I entered was around 20 years ago when I reported to a really, really poverty-stricken city job. And at that time in Connecticut, jobs were scarce for teachers. It was really difficult to find a job, especially as a phys ed instructor, soccer coach. So I ended up taking a job in this really rough neighborhood, and it was like that was one of those places where literally after dark, once the sun went down, you did not want to be on the street. And so I remember going in there in the lunchroom, and one of the first things, I sat down in the lunchroom, and a teacher told me this really depressing story about a drug dealer who was on trial shortly before I was hired, and he was going to get put away for murder, and there was only two witnesses, a young girl and her mother, and both of them were going to testify in the trial, and they ended up getting murdered themselves. And the drug dealer was acquitted, right? And it kind of set this really depressing tone for this city. And on top of it, the mayor of the city was just indicted on corruption charges. And it was really, really a difficult place at the time. So, you know, people were getting, even kids going home from school were getting robbed for their sneakers if they had nice sneakers on the way from home. It was a real wake-up call for me. It was a place where I saw the police come into the school and handcuff third graders and put them in the back of the squad car, more or less to kind of teach them a lesson and to scare them. And it was a place like where if I was going to take the kids outside to the playground to do phys ed class, I'd have to take the broom and wipe it and sweep the Hennessy bottles, sweep all the broken glass, if there was needles out there, I had to sweep the needles off the playground and really inspect it good before I could take the kids out there. So teaching in the school district was really, really difficult, and being an outsider, in my opinion, in all the places I've been, being an outsider can be an extra difficulty. Because if you're a regular from that community, and what I noticed right away was, say they went to school there and worked in that community for 30, 40 years, there was a different set of rules. It was a different environment for some of those employees than it was for me. I quickly learned that I really had to watch what I said, and especially how I taught and what I did and how I interacted with the kids, because it was dangerous for you as a worker. I had witnessed a couple teachers who were let out of the school system there in handcuffs for false accusations, only to be readmitted months after stress and until the allegations were proven false. And when you're working in an environment like that, it can become toxic really, really quickly. So what I knew was that I needed to operate in a very calculated way that also protected me, but also added value to the students. So my only answer that I could come up with is I made it a point to really teach skills, So I taught gymnastic skills. I researched every lesson. I invested a ton of time into the quality of each and every subject in phys ed, whether it was volleyball, basketball, gymnastics, you name it. I really went above and beyond. And the class discipline, to keep class discipline, was something I had to adapt to as well, because first I needed to gain everyone's trust by the hard work on a daily basis and to show the care that I put in. And over time, the kids and the teachers did see that. And I did build a decent amount of trust, but I still had to be careful of how I disciplined, where I put myself. There's no hugging, there's no nothing. Maybe there was a fist bump for a sign of approval, but mostly I would just clap my hands and say good job. So I really, really had to understand and adapt to the environment. And I'm talking, when I first got into this system, I can remember the police giving a presentation to all the teachers about the gangs in the neighborhood, and it was something that I've never seen before, with the gangs shooting out M16 machine guns, shooting out the streetlights every night, operating these crack houses and things of that nature. And it was all right in the neighborhood that we were teaching, and really trying to get a well-rounded idea of what the environment is. It took a long time. So that being said, I will take you to another story where I remember that there was a young student who was disrupting my fitness class, and I maybe had 50 kids in a fitness room with weights and all that, and he wasn't even part of my class, just decided to come in and throw weights around and kind of endangering other students and taunting me. And, I immediately kind of lost it. I got angry, and I told him, like, you need to leave, to go to class, and I was tough. And obviously he did not take well to that, and I stepped out in the hallway because I knew that there was cameras in the hallway, and sometimes when you get things on video, that's your best alibi. And when I got into the hallway, he put his hands up and challenged me. Obviously he was to a fight, and he was going to attack me. So at that point, I noticed that there was security walking down the hall, and security at that point, they operated as police officers. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, can you help me out? This young man's going to attack me here." And he looked at me, shook his head, and kept walking. And to be fair, the young man was probably associated. He was associated with maybe not so good of a group, and that hung out, and that group, was known for certain things, and I was not in a good situation. And what I had to come to realize in that whole thing, what the whole incident kind of taught me, was I was literally on my own. And after the whole incident kind of calmed down, I was lucky that a bunch of teachers came out of the classroom and broke it up. There was other dynamics involved there. They have to be careful, because some of the soccer players could have helped break it up, but if they're breaking it up between other groups, it could also cause a big problem. So after it got broken up, I asked the security guard, I said, "How come you didn't help me?" And the reality was that the security guard was friends with the young man, and that he said the reason he didn't help me was because I didn't call him by his first name. Of course, I didn't know his first name. And it's at that point that you realize, again, that I was by myself. And only my personality and my ability to operate in that particular environment is the only thing that could save me. And when I say save me, when I look back, though, that young man was in one of my earlier classes. And I could have taken the time to go out of my way and really get to know him and ask him questions every day. How are you? How was your train ride in? Da-da-da. And I think that if I built a little trust with him, maybe that situation could have been avoided. So when I look back at these type of experiences, it's hard, because when you're a young person and you're put in these experiences, you're not really understanding what's going on in that environment. But at the end of all this, the building of relationships, understanding your environment, and figuring out how you have to operate, if you could build some trust, it'll go a long way for you to be able to do your job. So let me put this into a coaching context, because this is a coaching podcast. Be interested in your players. Talk with them every single day. One of the best baseball coaches, he's a great high school coach. He played for the Baltimore Orioles. He would always say hello to the kids coming into the room every day. And I said, Coach, why do you, what's going on? Why do you say hello to everybody? Why do you stand outside your door? He says, listen, you never know what's going on in the kid's head. If it's a good day, if it's a bad day, by me saying hello to him, as soon as they walk through the door, he gets an indication of what's going on. If he needs to be extra, nice to somebody, if to show a little more attention to somebody, if they're having a bad day, he gets the read. And that was a very interesting piece of advice that I really liked from that coach. So be interested in your players. Talk with them. Really get to know them. Create an environment where they feel safe to be who they are. And very important, create an environment where they don't feel judged, where they're treated fairly with respect, and they're not afraid to try new things. They're not afraid of people making fun of them. And create an environment where the goal is for everybody, individually and collectively, to get better. Let them know that you appreciate them, and especially you appreciate the effort that they give. Now, one thing that I like to do at the end of practice is have the kids clap for each other for the effort they gave and shake hands. And when they're shaking hands, they say thank you to each other for the effort that they put in for each other to make each other better. So hopefully that's podcast number 2. That's about building trust and understanding your environment. And I understand that environment that I kind of took you through a couple stories from my education career. These environments are complicated. I don't expect everyone, obviously not everyone's going to have those same experiences, but it really does relate, no matter what the environment is, to your coaching. If you're going to go into one situation, it could be radically different than another situation, and you can't always do it the same way. You can't always the way you did it last week with this group might not work with the next group, and it might be a completely different environment. And just to be cognitively aware of that is the first step in being able to adapt. And then I can't say enough about how important it is to work really hard to gain the trust, be honest, be sincere, put in everything you can, and eventually that gets you over time to be really respected in most any environment that you're ever going to work in. So, hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to tune in to episode 3 of Coach Stories.